Welcome to Workers Rock, a podcast that explores this truth, that we have the power to change the culture of employment across the globe. I'm Emerette Miller, the host of Workers Rock. Workers Rock is part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. All right, let me think about this. So this is supposed to be episode 13. So with elevators, you skip 13.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Good. I don't want to be the unlucky one.
So we're going to make this episode 14 for the purposes of the show and, luck. Okay. So, all right, we're here with Maria Fisher. Maria is ground zero for workers' rights here in Rochester area of upstate New York in the United States. And, Maria was supposed to be episode 1. All of a sudden now she's episode 14 of Workers Rock. How are you, Maria?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Awesome. So, Maria, I know you a long time. And I know that you've been an advocate for workers, you've been a union staffer, you've worked in the public sector, you come from a union background. How did you get here?
It started really with my family. So my family came here as refugees after World War II. My family's Ukrainian. Had they been sent back, they would have been killed. And my grandmother would say, we're alive because of the generosity and the compassion of the American people. And so they came here, they ended up in Rochester getting jobs. My parents met, and they were high school dropouts who had a surprise, me as teenagers. And they had no money. When I was born, they actually couldn't pay the hospital bill. So the family put the money together to actually just get me out of the hospital and pay the bill. And so that was a scary time for my family. When you look at statistically people's success rate, mother's education is the number one factor in success when they look at it. And both my parents were high school dropouts. What changed the trajectory of my life is that a month after I was born, my dad was able to get a job in a union machine shop. And at the time, when you look at punch press operators and things like that, the equipment wasn't safe. People had lost fingers because of it. And there were a couple of times my mom's like, don't take that job. I know we need the money, but it's not safe. And he ended up getting a job as a machinist, a union machinist. He held every union position, moved up to become president of the union. When I was little, he would say there's only 2 unbreakable rules in our house: never lie and never cross a union picket line. I think those did really well for me following those rules. After 42 years with his company, the company was laying everyone off, and they required him to go to Poland to train his replacements, which he thought he would die in this job. He was heartbroken. This was the only job he'd ever known since he was a teenager. It's the only place he had gone day to day. He was devastated. And at the time, I wrote for the editorial board of the Democrat and Chronicle. And I said, Dad, can I tell your story? And if you know my dad, he doesn't like to tell emotional stuff. He doesn't like to tell personal stuff. And he was willing to do it. And he told his story and his fears of what was happening in American manufacturing. And I called it soul sucking, the human face of outsourcing. And that article actually, so I write this little article for the Rochester paper, and it ended up kind of going national. His national president heard about it. People were calling him. They're like, do you want to go fishing? They felt bad for him. I think I ended up getting in contact with someone with the AFL-CIO. They're like, have you ever had an interest in working in this field? I'd always been a supporter. I'd always been on the picket lines, but that article kind of turned around for me that there was a way professionally that I could turn my passion into a career.
Okay. Maria, you give yourself to everyone, meaning you care so much about others that it was the hardest thing to get you on this show alone. I'll just be honest with you. You're the one person who gives so much of yourself to the community, and everyone listening knows this for sure. It could be for labor. It could be for those who are visually impaired. It could be those who are trying to find jobs
So there's a program we are partnering with called Keeping Our Promise. And they bring Afghan SIV, so they're on special immigrant visa. They served with our military bravely and courageously. And now the US government brings them to Rochester, and Keeping Our Promise helps them find housing and jobs. And these are people who speak English, who are multi-skilled, who have shown their patriotism beyond what most people would ever do. And I believe they have a right to a good paying union job, better than just any job. Like, they deserve that. And so I'm helping to connect the people who come here with good jobs.
Okay. So if for people listening, say they're HR directors or managers in organizations, what would they do to bring on these worker hopefuls?
They can contact me, Maria Thomas Fisher. I'm on social media and I'm going to work with them. I'm going to Keeping Our Promise, the organization. We're going to be promoting this really soon. So I'll be going there once a month on a Friday, and we'll be bringing employers to meet with the people there. And again, they're really skilled, some with mechanical skills. So most have been interpreters. So often they served as interpreters plus. So they were interpreters and maybe mechanics, interpreters, and did all kinds of work in Afghanistan. These are people who are ready to work, and they're a great workforce. And we're excited to work with them and get them into the good jobs that they deserve to have.
Awesome. So Maria, you were recently voted in as the vice president of the Rochester Area Labor Federation, AFL-CIO. Is that so?
That's correct.
Okay. And for the Rochester Labor Council, you are the recording secretary?
That's correct.
Okay. And so your day job, you work as the communications director and political action director for AFSCME Council 66.
Yes, I love it.
Okay. That's awesome. So tell me about your work and your passions in your work.
The fun part of my job is I get to do a lot of stuff. So I write member spotlights, which I love. So I approach it from a very personal way when I interview a member. So it's talking about their job, but it's the deeper levels of who they are, where they came from, how they got there. One of the things I love about our union is that for many members, they are the first generation out of poverty. These jobs are what helps support their families. And we have a number of members who are formally incarcerated, and these jobs give them opportunities. So I've written those stories. We had one member in Albany, Kenneth. One day he and his partner Crone are driving. It's 5 a.m. They've got their sanitation truck and they see a fire in a building. They call the fire department, and no one's coming yet. And then they hear screams, and they hear the screams of children. And Kenneth said it triggered that thing in him. He never had a father figure, and it triggered the father in him. And he went in, and he and Crone rescued everyone in that burning building before the fire department got there. And had we not given Kenneth a chance, there might have been people who wouldn't be alive today because of it. People deserve. The thing I love about unions is we are organizations of second, third, fourth, fifth chances, and that's who we should be. And often the people end up incarcerated because of systems that are broken, because of power systems that have kept them down. And anything we can do to get them into these good paying jobs to support their families, they're going to turn around and support their community in ways we won't even believe or know.
So with AFSCME Council 66, what industries do you represent? Like what types of workers?
We represent very diverse industries, and AFSCME Council 66 is part of AFSCME International. So it has about 1.5 million members nationwide. So we're the biggest public sector union. Our largest group is sanitation workers. That's really how we started to get public attention. Was the Memphis sanitation strikes in 1968, which Martin Luther came down for and tragically was assassinated at those. And that's where we started to get attention. But we represent everything from school districts, non-teaching, non-uniform in municipal and local governments. We represent hospitals, both private and public. We represent libraries. So when I meet with members, I get to meet with very diverse groups of members. In the city of Rochester, we may have a city of recreation worker. We may have a 911 operator, or we may have someone who is an investigator for serious crimes.
So at any given time, you can be communicating with upwards of almost 80 different presidents. Is that sort of like what I'm getting from
Yeah.
your
Yeah. I talk to a lot of different presidents, and I talk to a lot of different members, which is really fun. And I'm trying to get them all kind of politically engaged, get them engaged in the union movement and understand what that is. You know, they're bought into understanding what these jobs are and the opportunities they've created. And now I'm trying to help them understand that we're part of a bigger labor movement and we have a bigger voice than just our local. I just went to the Labor Notes Conference, which is one of the biggest union conferences in the world. And there were 5,000 people there. And it was a real motivator. And I brought our leadership, and next time we're going to bring members. Mm-hmm. But to see all of these union activists from around the world together in one place. And solidarity is our voice. It is who we are. And the more we can work together, the better it'll be for workers around the world.
Maria, what is your dream, your magic wand when it comes to labor success in America and across the world? Like, what are some things that you think that need to change in the workplace that you know that unions are working on, that you just want to see happen? Like, just do it.
I want workers to understand their power. And I just saw Sean Fain speak, President UAW, and I was lucky enough to be at Labor Notes right after the Volkswagen vote. And he said, it's not corporations who are going to save us. It's not presidents who are going to save us. It's workers who are going to save us. We are the liberators. So I want workers to understand their power. There are 2.5 million union members in New York alone. I want to see an increase in unionization rates. But for the union members that are there, we are one of the only really organized groups that can speak to power and come together and have the resources to do so. So I want to do that at stronger levels and do that across the country and across the world. Corporations are thinking globally when they think about things. Corporate greed thinks globally. I want us as unions to think globally. The person who's trying to get a job in this country is not my enemy. It's the people who try to take dignity away from workers, who don't give them the benefits, that don't give them the appropriate wages. That's the people I'm working against.
Right. What do you think about inflation when it comes to raises? Like, how should organizations be keeping pace with this? Like, what are some of the innovative things that you're seeing that employers are doing with unions pushing, that's helping, workers stay afloat in this wild and crazy economy?
Well, one of the things we're seeing is there's a lot of openings. COVID is part of that. People retired. We lost a lot of people. People went on disability. There's just a lot of openings across the board. And so we're now working with employers in levels we haven't worked with before. Mm-hmm. And so we held a union job fair, career fair. And it wasn't just for ours. It was like all unions. And so all union organizations. So we had universities and school districts and trucking companies and everything you get, and GM, which was a very popular company. And so it was private, for-profit. We all came together understanding that filling these positions is good for everyone. And there's just a lot of people who don't know how to get into a good job, and they're stuck doing a couple different jobs. They're trying to do the best they can. They're barely afloat. And there's now, I look at GM, which was the most popular employer there. That wouldn't have been the case 2 years ago. So GM, people were lined up for GM. GM now starts at $21 an hour. After 9 months is $27 an hour. After 3 years, maybe 3 or 6 years, it's $36 an hour. That's life-changing money for people. That is transforming people's lives. And so I think it is a positive that employers are getting that we need to fill these positions. Working with the unions instead of working against each other is better for everyone.
Right. So tell me, Maria, about you. Like, you give yourself to others and to causes and to us. Tell us about Maria. Tell us about like you?
It's hard to separate me from union. And I think anybody who knows me probably knows that because it's just in my soul. So I would say my soul is union. My heart is probably my best friend Helen and her son Elijah. My best friend Helen, I met, she's totally blind. She's amazing. She was a Paralympian, and I met her. I volunteer for a blind baseball team. So I met her 8 years ago, and we've become best friends. The first day I met her son, he was 2 years old, and he walked up to me and said, "You will be my new best friend." And I was like, "I'm in, little man." And he has become so much more than that. Helen has allowed me to raise him, and he has changed my mindset. He's changed my life, and he's my priority. So I think when now having him in my life, I think about how to make the world a better place for him. And so as I said, unions are my soul and he's my heart. And in 8 years, he's going to go out into the world and be a Black man. And I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to make the world a better place for him and everyone who looks like him.
Okay. Awesome. So I know Elijah will be listening, his mom, Helen. So hi, Helen.
Hi, Elijah. Hi, Helen. He would be mad if you know Elijah, he's a very assertive young man. So he would be mad if I didn't mention him.
Most definitely. Tell me about labor in Rochester, New York. So we have listeners from all over the world. We have listeners in Germany, in the UK, and Taiwan, and Nepal. Tell me about the labor movement here in Monroe County for those who are listening globally.
You know, I think Rochester itself was traditionally not a union town. And so we had companies like Kodak that were pretty anti-union, and they were big. They used to produce film, and probably anyone in the world has heard of Kodak. And we had 60,000 workers, and they gave bonuses, and they had retirement, they had things like that. So people were willing to not have a union in order to be in this company that paid pretty well and had good benefits. But then Kodak fell apart. People lost their pensions. People lost their jobs. There's not much left of Kodak anymore. We don't really even have it on the corporate radar anymore. And that's when people started to realize, like, you need people standing up for you and you need people having a voice. And I think we're seeing that. I know we're seeing that more in Rochester. We're seeing it, we look at Starbucks, which unionized in Rochester and Buffalo, and now look where it's gone. Like, it's expanded, it's huge. So we're seeing a lot of young people getting very actively involved in the labor movement. I think the last survey was Gen Z is 70% supportive of unions. We recently saw Rochester General Hospital nurses unionize, and in general, our hospitals are not unionized if they're private in Rochester, and this is really a first, and it's huge. And the company the hospital spent over $1 million. I think it was third highest for union busting spending in the country against these 800 nurses. They gathered together. They were innovative. They stuck together, and they did something called open bargaining, which I think we're going to see more of. So you have your people who do contract bargaining, and typically it's a closed room. You have your couple people who bargain a contract. Management has their couple people. Everybody bargains together. Members don't know on a day-to-day. So they did open bargaining on their contract. They had their leadership team, but any nurse who wanted to could come and hear how bargaining was doing. Mm-hmm. And so nurses who were against the union or thought, well, I don't think I want a union. Once they saw how management was treating the nurses, it really turned it around. Once the process became transparent, they went on strike for brief periods of time. They didn't want to impact patient care, but they wanted to make a statement. And they got the entire labor movement behind them. Every union was supporting them. And they got an amazing contract, best they've ever had. And so that's just the start. We're just gonna keep seeing that expand in our community. I expect to see it in healthcare, small nonprofits, justice-related organizations. It's only going to expand. Unions are as popular right now as they were in 1965, which was the height of union popularity. People understand that unions are what you need to have a voice in your company.
I remember when I started here in Rochester in the labor movement in 2015. Well, I started in labor in 2008. Gosh. But in 2015, I landed here and I started in the labor movement here. And I just remember how much cohesion there was. The Rochester Labor Council had a great attendance. So it's always been like invigorated, but I just see it more now. Like I see more union activity, crisscrossing of industries and different unions taking a chance at unionizing different types of workers. Um, what are the victories that you're most proud of across the country for unions this year? Like what are you like just in awe about that has happened this year?
I would say RGH that I spoke about. I'm so proud of them. Nurses are not natural activists, although they should be. They should teach that in college. They're not, I should say, they're not natural activists for themselves. They are wonderful activists and advocates for their patients. So that was a huge victory and it made national news. I think, we're seeing UAW, like, amazing. Sean Fenn's amazing, but the whole UAW movement that we're seeing right now, Volkswagen getting unionized in the South and their Southern strategy, this is just the start. It was a brilliant plan to have all three under one contract. Even retirees were getting benefits. UAW is revitalized. And it's democratic now. It used to be you voted for your leaders who voted for people. Now it's one person, one vote. Like, I'm very excited to just keep seeing what UAW does.
What are some of the things that are coming down the pike with labor and with changes in the workplace? Is there anything sensational out there? Like we saw Juneteenth sweep across the nation, like amazing advocacy from unions to make it actually happen in different municipalities and counties, and now it's widespread. Like is there anything that you see as a trend that's gonna happen because of union involvement?
I think what you're saying is that unions are thinking bigger picture in terms of justice and community justice, racial justice, social justice, that it's not just about this contract that you're working on for our members. Our members go back out into communities where they're having trouble finding childcare. They're going back out into communities where they're having trouble finding housing. Housing prices are ridiculous. They're going out into communities where they may be treated equally under their contract, but they aren't. And they're experiencing racism. And so I think it's our responsibility to address all of those issues. And I think labor has a great role to do so because we actually have the people, we have the resources, and we can be a voice on those issues that impact our members' lives and everyone's lives.
Awesome. So what else? What did we miss?
I just wanted to mention that April is Donate Life Month. So that is something I am involved with, is organ donation. I'm a living kidney donor, and I believe it is.
You are.
So I believe it is a worker justice issue, and that's something I think we'll see. We had the first contract my union in New York State, we believe, that gave time off for organ, platelet, and blood donation. Our LRS was an organ recipient. The president of the union that had that contract was a blood recipient, and it saved his life. And then that was Niskayuna, New York. The mayor had a friend whose life was saved by a kidney donation. We then went to Plattsburgh and wrote that in. So we are trying to spread the word that you can include that in your contracts. It is a worker issue. If people can't take time off to be an organ donor, then they're not going to be able to unless there is some kind of policy that allows it.
Okay. Who was the LRS?
Alex Catello.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So how can people find you on social media?
I am on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Maria Thomas Fisher, or you can look up on our website, AFSCMEcouncil66.org. Feel free to contact me. I want to hear from people. If you're looking to unionize in the Rochester area, reach out to me and I can connect you with the appropriate union. Not every union's going to be for us, for AFSCME, like maybe retail industries and things, but there's somebody for you. If you want to unionize, there is a union who is interested, who's there to offer support, and I'm happy to be the conduit to connect you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you, Amaret.
All right, Maria Fisher, workers' rights advocate out of Rochester, New York, Monroe County, Upstate New York, all across the country of the USA. Thank you for joining us on Workers Rock, episode 14.
Thank you so much for having me, Amaret. Great podcast. I'm excited to be on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
That concludes this episode of Workers Rock. Thank you for listening.